Okay, everyone, welcome back. So once again tonight, I am going to be playing around on the System Command Line library. For anyone who missed it last week, I talked a little bit about the library and how we're pushing towards trying to get a full release out the door for GA. So let's jump in and we'll talk. Oop, not that button. That's the button we want. Let's talk through this a little bit. So there's a couple things going on with this library. So for people who haven't seen me talk about this before, this is a library that aims to make building console applications much easier. It comes with a huge variety of features. It'll do everything from parsing your little string args array. It has a full invocation and pipeline model, tab completion. There's a lot of stuff baked into this. There's some expansions on top of it, including being able to do strongly typed main methods, which are pretty cool in my opinion. But you'll note if we look at, so here is, for people interested, let's see, copy link. For anyone wanting to follow along, there is the link for the System Command Line library. And underneath the issues on the milestone, you'll note that there's this 2.0 GA milestone with a whole bunch of stuff here. So currently, this library has been doing preview NuGet package releases, and we would like to get a full release out the door, which would be awesome. So this is a bunch of stuff that has been identified as what is needed for that GA release. So we are going to see what we can do. Last week, we knocked out like 4 or 5 easy ones, which was great. I expected to do like 2, and we just kind of plowed through stuff. So there's this localizability issue that I think we were going to look at. So there's not a lot of information here, but this is basically boiling down to the idea of when this thing is doing its parsing and whatnot, what will happen at some point in time is there will need to be an error message shown to the user. And right now, those error messages are pretty well hard-coded. There's ways to override them and change them, but it's not necessarily set up for localizability. So I went through and kind of did a initial first stab at it, and then got lots of feedback, both from Sam Harwell and then Jared Parsons. So we got a bunch of stuff in here, and including the CLS compliance bit. This is one thing that we may actually go and turn back off. It was one of the pull requests we did last week, but after some discussion here, we should take it back out and then move on from there. I think we'll leave the attribute, but we'll explicitly set it over to false. So what the suggestion was here, so let's go and look. So I am already on my branch. So if anybody, let me find, where is the magic open on GitHub? View it on GitHub, please. So if anybody's interested, this is fix 1125. This is, actually it's probably just as easy if I just link the PR, because the branch will be right at the top if you want it. So I'd done a little bit of work and poked at it here. There was a suggestion to use this localizable resource string. Now, I had unfortunately misunderstood initially and took that to mean that what we should do is reference the Microsoft Code Analysis NuGet package. And after some discussion here, the suggestion here was to actually just bring in, rather than taking a dependency on it, suggesting we create a copy of localizable resource string as part of this repository. So great, we can certainly do this. So let's start with the CLS compliant flag. That's the easy one. I don't remember where we set it. My memory is short, but I've got a lot of caffeine with me tonight, so we're in good shape there. Okay. So we'll start with this lovely guy here, and we'll just go whatcha. And I don't know, so I think I know what needs to happen here. I think I'm not 100% confident. Let's see, validation messages. That's not it. Let's try again. Validation messages. Boom. This is what we're going for. So right here, this is what is most of the stuff, right? So there's a class, there's a static instance of it, but more importantly, this guy here goes through, and all of these members are virtual. So you can derive from this class and overwrite it. That's the intent. Why do I not see? This guy here. So I picked on this directory does not exist one. You'll note that it adds in a resource string and does some stuff that's very similar to how that localizable resource string goes. So if we go and look at project properties here, you will note under resources that there is, oh, this is the new thing. Where, how do I get to, I think you must have to do it here. Properties, show me. That's what we're looking for. So I do have this localizable resource here as well. And then because of the build system, it generated a whole bunch of stuff. So I had commented in my PR that I think it's doing the right thing. This looks, the build system here uses something internal to Microsoft for, I believe it's called Arcade, for doing all of the build stuff, which is great. I'm sure tons of magic and awesomeness to make sure that all of their libraries and everything gets built correctly. But sometimes it's for somebody outside the system, it's not always straightforward or obvious. So there's that minor detail. Okay, so let's start with the next suggestion. Sorry, getting messaged ironically about this PR. So let's go and see about what we want to do. So the suggestion was then to bring in a copy of this guy, and conveniently I have all of this code. So let's see what a copy of this guy looks like. So I think I know what I'm doing. I think I know what I'm doing. I like to think I know what I'm doing. I don't always know what I'm doing. You know what? We're gonna, I think, go right at the root, because I don't. It may be worth nesting this in a namespace here shortly, but we will see. So there's that. Let's drop the namespace. Drop the namespace, or actually, let's do this. Let's just do this. Public class. Sorry, we're gonna cheat for a moment. Do this, do this, do this. Let's see. Move to type, and then we will go here. Boom, boom, like that. Okay, so that gets me somewhere. We're gonna get. I don't know how important it is to have these headers in the file, but we're gonna maintain them for now. We're going to drop anything with Roslyn and code analysis in it. Is there a, yeah, change namespace. That sounds great. Object writable. I have no idea what that is. No idea what that does. So we're going to, so we've got a static constructor with this object binder thingy. We'll need to figure out what to do with that. Let's see here. I don't see any reason why these shouldn't be throw expressions, so we're just gonna go that route. Okay, so we have this guy here, private constructor that takes in an object reader. I'm going to assume that's not completely necessary at the moment. Should we're using serialization? Don't know if I care. Don't think I care. I think I care about this, because this is ultimately the key bit with all of this, is if the format provider is passed into this get text method, typically a culture info, it's going to use that. Otherwise, it'll fall back to UI culture. Sure, great. Calls into the cached resource manager, right, and pulls the string back. If the string's not null and there are format arguments, do a string format on it. Otherwise, just kick back the string. Otherwise, string empty. So this guy never returns a nullable string. So that is an important thing to note, is I don't know the library that I just copied this out of if they've got nullable reference types turned on. So there may be some subtle, even though these are the same text, they may not be identical. But these look pretty close to on point. Okay, so there's that. There's some hash codey stuff. Do we have access to these methods? We don't. This here, I think I'm going to double check, but that may end up being the exact same as the value tuples hash code. We will check. What is your format argument sequence equals? Why are you squawking? Oh. This is a different sequence equals. Oh, well, that's interesting. But the lambda for this is literally A equals B. So you know what? We're just going to do that. I think that makes sense. Okay, so let's start with, we're going to get this object writable thing out. Let's go grab localizable string next. Let's go back and see, I assume it's probably sitting right alongside localizable string. Well, there you are. So why don't you come and play? Let's see, a string that may be formatted differently depending on culture. That sounds great. That kind of sounds like kind of what I want. So come here. And based on the fact that I don't see any weird nullable reference types issues, I'm sort of imagining that they probably already have nullable reference types turned on. Going to make that assumption. Hey, Robert. Sorry, we are powwowing on System Command Line. Oh, and I'm sorry, my font is tiny. Make it bigger. I don't know if, because I know I've sent this before, but if you're interested, there is the library, and more importantly, my PR for it. So we're working on, there's looking to do a GA release for it. You are a very kind person. I normally, it's making the font bigger is on my to-do list before I start streaming. I was just doing other stuff and completely spaced it. Okay, so what all is in here? We've got this guy here, fixed localizable string create. This looks like some sort of string table-y thingy. So we'll go look that guy up here in a moment. Get text, get hash, are equal. Let's see. Suppresses operation canceled exceptions. Otherwise, punts them, and then diaper pattern for the on exception. This guy here, flag indicating we may want to just drop that guy. I don't know if that, in fact, I'm not sure. I don't know how much of this stuff we want, but we will see. So let's go look at this fixed localizable stringy bit. So I assume you are back here. A, B, C, D, E, F. Oh, it's not here. It's not right in front of me. Whatever will I do? We will jump into here and go, oh, wait. There is a cool thing they added to GitHub where one can do navigate to, oh, do you not have it? Oh, fail. See, and the fact that it says using system means that it's got to be around here somewhere. It ain't that far away. It's inside of localizable string. Oh, it's a partial. That's what I missed. So it is alongside. Ahaha. It's in a partial. You sneaky, sneaky, sir. Okay. Why am I doing this? Raw mode. And whoop. And we will just go for now. Alongside sounds great. And what do we got here? So let's see. Fixed localizable string. It's got an empty string. So what is this thing? What does CLS compliant mean? That is a great question. So the CLS compliant, as I understand it, is a flag that indicates that your library is supposed to be consumable from all .NET-y languages. The problem is, at least according to some of the Roslyn guys, who were chiming in on that pull request, is that turning that on actually causes more problems. So there's sort of an interesting thing is CLS compliant is very old when different things were being like put into the global assembly cache or GAC. And you had dependency hell and version mismatch and this, that, and the other, and binding redirects and all of that. So it's back from that day and age. And more often than not, now people just care about source level compatibility, because there's multiple types of backwards compatibility. You've got the source level where do I need to go and change the code that I've typed, and then you've got binary compatibility, which is can I just drop in the new DLL and not have to recompile my stuff? And most of the time, people don't care that much about binary compatibility. Most of the time, what they care about is when I rev your NuGet package, do I have to go and change any of my code or not? So source level compatibility. So I don't have a great explanation as to why for the warnings that they referenced and the downstream stuff. Most of the stuff I've used has been CLS compliant false, but we had a PR I should say a PR, an issue that somebody raised on the System command line library where they wanted it turned on. And there's some old school code and that kind of thing. Like there's reasons why people might want it on, but apparently it's more problematic. And this library is more moving forward rather than trying to support old stuff. Like we're not going to try and break backwards compatibility on old frameworks and whatnot if we can help it, but we're not going out of our way to support really old ones either. So I'm curious what this Roslyn string is null or empty does. I kind of have a hunch. It's because this is coming from the Roslyn project. So this, I have a feeling. What is a Roslyn string? Ooh, and that's what it looks like when you have caps lock turned on backwards. I'm sorry, can I not spell? Copy. Yep, I can't spell. Oh, I was typing no E. Thank you. I was I Rose. Okay, so this comes. This comes in. I'm happy that it's file linked in, but where? Yeah, this is what I'm looking to see. Interesting. It's literally a wrapper around string is null or empty. I wonder what the point of this is. Yeah, this net 2.0 stuff makes me wonder if this is around some sort of backwards compatibility. The attribute. The null, yeah, the nullable reference types. So okay. I am not interested in dealing with this. I see string. Okay. Okay, so possible null reference Yeah, the weird part for me is this one right here, and I'm going to go back and double check the code that I copied from because that looks unusual to me. Let's see, localizable string. Oh, wrong one. Nope. It's on the right one in the first place. This create method. Right. Oh, this is in the partial class, so I'm in the wrong one. I need to be here. I don't understand. Ah, that attribute is how they were getting around it. Got it. So they did this so that string is null or empty would be decorated appropriately, and the compiler wouldn't yell about this invocation. Okay, I think I know what I do here. No. Muchas better. Muchas better. Okay, and also this may match their naming conventions, doesn't match the ones in this library. So we change that. Okay, so that brings that in. That works. That works. Okay, I think everyone's happy here. I'll be curious to see if that thing is actually going to get used. That guy is in and compiles. Are you even getting used? Or are you literally? Yeah, so grumble, 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 grumble. It's internal and virtual. So it's internal, therefore I can whack it. Because it's not going to be public anyway. Okay. Yeah, and again, this is inside of the Roslin's, the Roslin repository, so it doesn't shock me that there's probably interesting stuff in there that doesn't matter as much to me. And I'm hesitant to get too carried away, though I kind of want to get a little carried away. We're going to clean up some of this stuff because, darn it, I like the expression-bodied members. Because that just looks clean to me. Okay. Because every repo can have their own coding standards, that's fine. But when you copy it into your repo, it is your responsibility now, so clean it up. So we will. Clean that guy up. Okay, so I have a hunch. Okay, so I kind of want to go out real quick. Source.net, and I want to go and look at value tuples. Because I have a sinking suspicion that though I don't have direct access to that hash function, ooh, boy, I tried to zoom in. That did not play nice. What? Okay, Robert, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm gonna try. Okay, internal static hash combine. So this is, yeah. So I think this is not the same one that I expect. Yeah, because this is system reflections internal. Okay, so let's go back, because I'm a little curious to look and see what if the part of me is wondering if they have their own hash that they wrote inside of here. Let's be more explicit, because that is not getting me where I want to go. So you, sir, have hash combine. About combined values, that's probably going to be the most distinct. Combine values. Of course. So here is this guy. See, and I'm fairly confident that this hash combine method is, or something very similar to it. Okay, we're gonna cheat, right? I don't want to think too hard. So combine, the key one is the combined values that I want to check on though, because combined values is the one. What does it do with this? So it goes through, if values are null, returns 0. Otherwise, iterate through max items to hash. In our case, it's doing all of them. Great. So a counter for that. And then otherwise, just do the, oh, that's a string comparer. Otherwise, just combine the hash codes together. Okay. Okay, so I think what we are going to do, let's see here. And, sure. And, trying to decide, I kind of want to confirm that you can do, so my initial gut reaction is grab all of these guys, right? Because this guy is literally combining, ding. So these two get combined together, then these two get combined together, and then that gets combined together. Great. But I think what I can do is I can get away with doing this. And and I'm fairly confident if I remember correctly. And then on the end of the value tuple, you just get hash code and return hash code. I have not forgotten that we have to do the format args, but I want to get this to compile real quick, and then we're going to take a little DN spy look at this method. Because object binder doesn't exist. Well, that's a simple fix. See, it doesn't exist now. Boom. Come on, compile. And then we will go and grab. Okay, build succeeded. Okay, so one of the weird things to note about this is just with the way the thing works, there's no bin directory inside of the project. So that's fun. It ends up getting redirected out to here. And one of you two is a liar. That one. So this is the guy. That's the guy. Come here, my lovely DN spy. Load this guy up. So I want to go and look at this and see exactly what that did. So let's go here, here, and see? There you go, Robert. Doesn't do the side panel, but that won't matter for long. Okay, now we're talking. So C Sharpie mode. I want to dive into here. Runtime helpers. Well, that goes right out the door. I think I'm okay with that. I think the simple answer is I'm going to trust that value tuple has a reasonable hash code function and move on. Okay. So I think we then do for each. So format arguments, I assume, are non-null, right? Array.empty, yeah, it's non-null. Great. Let's see, var format argument in format arguments, right? There's this. Hash code gets hash code format argument. Booyah! Abuse of value tuple to get a nice hash code function where I don't have to think too hard. Okay, because writing your own hash code function sucks. And I can't decide. Is that worse? Is it better? I don't know. We'll go with that for the moment. We'll go with that. I don't know how many people are like, I'm trying to make it obvious that these parens are here because these parens are value tuple now, not something else. And I don't know if that's overly obvious. Okay, so my coloring's off on that equals. The last item in the array is set to hash. Do we want that? I don't think so. No, that's not what we want, but I don't think that's what we're getting here. So because this is taking in the hash code already as one of the members of the value tuple, I believe the value tuple will give you a good hash code for each element within it. That's the assumption. And so rather than necessarily a sum, because a lot of times in hash functions you'll see like an XOR thing. So this is me sort of trying to do the hash code combine, or at least that's the intent. Okay, so we are compiling. I don't think we need or want this object writable stuff. I'm going to assume that that's used by other Roslyn-y things that I don't care about. Some mug filled with Mountain Dew. No, it's actually filled with coffee, but don't worry. I've got my invisible can of Mountain Dew right here. Because reasons. And because you missed it earlier. Merry Christmas. Okay. Okay, so that gives us that. Let's clean this guy up. And I think what we want to do is... let's see. Copied from... And then let's go and grab that lovely guy. Actually, if I go here on my PR, I link to it. Boom. This guy. More importantly, I link to it at a particular hash. That's important. If somebody wants to go back to this later. Boom. That now goes there. This guy here. This has the partial. Let's see. I think we just abandoned partial, right? And I'm just going to move this guy inside. I don't know if there's any compelling reason for me to make this partial. I don't think there is. Let's see. Collapse all those guys and paste that there. Oh. Fire up Karnak because apparently I forgot about that. Side note here, completely unrelated to what we're doing. I think a Discord channel would be fun for this stream. You are not the first one to ask for it, and secretly there is one. I just have I've literally never advertised it. I have it hooked up to keep track of chat messages. That way I can go back through when I'm writing the description for my stream on YouTube and copy all of the links that I pasted into chat. So I've been cheating. But let's talk about that, Robert. Especially if somebody wants to play moderator for me on it, I am not opposed to the idea. Okay, so I think that gets us here. I think we can then clear that using statement up. That looks fine. Well, Robert, MVPs can recommend other people. So That is a possibility. But I will also say it is one of several data points that gets looked at. Okay, so I think that gets me naming violation. These words must begin with uppercase characters. What is it? What are you suggesting? Oh, interesting. I wonder why that is making that suggestion, because we've got an editor config. I'm thinking that that is an issue with our editor config, because this is the naming scheme used in this library. So if somebody wants to hunt down the magical editor config setting that's trying to make this thing do a capital N on the fields, that'd be great. Love to accept a PR for that. Okay. So that is there. That is there. Okay, so that gets us into this bit, right? Okay, so I think then what that means, so let's go and pick on this guy. So given that, I think, so that's the other thing that's worth noting. On my PR, I linked to some documentation. There's the magical bit. So this is some documentation that was written for people who are building custom analyzers, right? Because analyzers, you probably want to go through and deal with, having a localized message. Let me try that. Hang on. One more time. For your analyzer, you probably want to have a localized message to be able to tell people, hey, this is what we're fixing and why, right? So you can do stuff like this. And the idea is that if you go through and when you create up, I thought it listed it here. The slur doesn't make me believe the mug is filled with coffee. Would you believe I'm somewhat tired? I've had a lot of long nights. There's the preferred language bits in here, right? Where you can go through and change things out. And there's a couple things that I'm not 100% confident in. So I think what I want to do, again, I'm somewhat guessing here. I think what I want to change this guy to is one of these, right? So I want this guy to look like this, right? And then in here, I just instantiate, right? And same. Last 4 weeks I put in over. Oh, I am so very sorry. No, one of my projects, there's been a big push for getting a release out the door before the holidays because nobody wants to work the holidays. So there's been not a lot of late nights for me, but then sometimes things run late and then I've got a bunch of stuff at the house to try and do, and it's just busy. You would think with quarantine you would be less busy. Turns out it's a different type of busy. Okay, so given this, I think what I do then, again, think, not 100% confident, think. This guy here takes in name of localized resource. Now, this is where things get a little weird to me. I think what this guy is aiming to do here, right, is basic, because it's going to end up doing this lookup here. So this key is its first parameter. So, right, so that goes there. And then it needs a resource manager. So null, because I got no idea what we're doing for that yet. And then resource source. Again, not 100% sure what I'm doing for this. So let's go in and look at, so let's start with, so resource manager, I know what this thing is. I know how to instantiate one. Because, for example, this guy here that gets auto-generated for you, he comes with one, which is great, right? Resource managers, not a hard thing to instantiate. They come with this little, what is it, like an owner type, base name? Sure, right? And then an assembly. which is fine, great. But these are static stuff, right? So there's all of that, which is fine, I think. And this is why I was somewhat confused on this guy, but I'm assured that this is the right path. And then resource source. So I think I want to look at what this gets used for. So that gets passed into here, gets passed into here. Resource source. What do you get used for? Find all references. So there's that. There's typing. Okay, so this literally gets used for equality members and nothing else. Got it. Okay, so that I think makes sense. So if it is literally, so it's sort of, if I can liken it to a WPF type, it's sort of the equivalent of like your owner type for a dependency property. Okay, I think that if I just got to translate it into my WPF brain. Yeah, parent type. The only thing I don't like about that wording is parent implies some sort of hierarchy. And this isn't quite a hierarchy. This is more, I don't know what you call it. I guess owner makes a little more sense. It's the thing, the responsible party. Like when you go into the hospital and the insurance person walks in and says, "Who's going to pay the bill if you aren't able to?" That's what you put here, the responsible party. Give or take a little bit. So I think what we are going to do is we are just going to use validation messages, which is probably something that needs to be renamed. Not me. Yes, that is the dream. Maybe I should have led with the Mountain Dew, not the coffee. That would have been better. Okay, so now the next question. Where are we going to get a resource manager from? We could instantiate one. I'm sort of curious to look and see if I'm halfway tempted to do something crazy like clone the Roslyn repo. That sounds like a great way to shoot yourself in the foot. But I want to see how they use it. I wouldn't clone it. Get test resource manager instance. So when in doubt, look at the tests. So what do? They've got some dictionaries, and they've got a custom resource manager that derives from resource manager. Takes a dictionary of string of dictionary of string of string naturally, for a resource set map, and does some iteration and adds them in. Okay, so that makes sense to me. That's a lot of. I guess that's the way you kind of have to test it. So then the question, though, I have is analyzer resources resource manager. So this is the Roslyn stuff wraps a lot of things. So if we start using the Roslyn stuff, we go back to Roslyn is null. I'm trying. I really don't want to. So there was a bit of a discussion offline about should we take a dependency on their NuGet package, and the answer was yeah. That is something we want to do with much slowness and trepidation. I kind of want to see. I kind of want to see where this guy comes from. Would not recommend it. I was gonna say that seemed a little odd, but okay. You're telling me analyzer resources doesn't exist here. No, it does. Somebody's referencing it. So the question is, where is that guy coming from? And after doing all of this work, I'm also realizing that my company's analyzers that we wrote are not localized. I kind of want to go fix that now. Might have to go and do that. Let's look in here, because this is a, like, I know where it has to be. This type is in one of these namespaces, and I'm pretty confident it's not in the first three. So that's narrowed down my hunt to those choices. But I know he is around here somewhere. Okay, so let's go back. Let's try this. Let's go a little bigger, I guess. Only 103 results. That, I wish there was a way to say find file names, right? Like, I want the file that has this name. Hoy vey. Let's hope it's not being auto-genned. That is a possibility, but I don't think that's where it is. I kind of just want to see. Oh, I don't know if you saw it, Robert. I posted something out on Twitter as well. GitHub has now gotten rid of their cookie notifications. Apparently, the way around the was it GDPR in the EU is you only have to show the cookie notification if your website uses cookies for non-essential tasks. And so what they did is they just eliminated all non-essential cookies and don't show ads. Problem solved. It's like, oh, well, that was easy. I'm sure it's a hard sell for a lot of marketing people, but it's a very easy workaround. Okay, I see all of this stuff. Somebody declares this type. I just want this type and where it exists. I want to go look at how it implements. I am noticing something. This appears to be potentially a generated. Oh. Hang on. I'm noticing a teeny little detail. You'll need to create a resx file to hold your localizable. We'll assume you're putting them in a file. Ha 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 ha. Not seeing that tweet. Well, I did it from my phone, so maybe that's the reason. There's a very real possibility that I screwed that up. Look at that. Let's see. I'm trying to remember the guy the new VP of GitHub, Friedman. Why am I blanking on his first name? How about this? GitHub cookies. Yeah. Ironically, all these sites about it show cookies. Yeah, Friedman. I just apparently can't spell his name. Nat Friedman. So this. Not that. Not that. This one. Oh, apparently I hit the like button and didn't hit the retweet. Boom. There it goes. But if you're interested, he links to a little blog post about it as well. Boom. That guy. This is why I don't see it. Because the expectation is that you create a resx file, and the resx file then generates this up. Because when you create a resx file, it gets added. Here, I'll just show you. I could talk about it, or I could just show it. It gets this stuff added in, which gets picked up as part of the build process. So like the resx file code generator, this has existed it forever. That's what's going on. So, okay. So if that's the case, that makes this easy. Properties dot resources dot resource manager. Ba-ba-ba. And I'm kind of wondering if that's the case. So here's the part that I'm a little confused on, right? So this guy here, jump me in, right? Like it's going to generate this string for me. Why? Well, I am missing the beautiful part. Like, so this localized resource string. Ah, okay. I think I understand now. So I'm going to talk through this. And so, okay. So here's the two versions of the code, right? We either get the localized resource string or we do what I did, right? So mine literally just calls into the resource manager, uses the generated property, says bippity boppity booyah, get me the string out, and then does effectively the same work with the string out of the resx file, right? For the null check and the format stuff, right? So very simple. This one here does something slightly different in that this now holds both the resource manager and this key, which give it enough information to go and get the thing out of the resx file, but it also holds on to, and we didn't pass it here, so this is a bug, right? So this guy here now also takes in path because he also, because his overload here on the very end has a params for the format arguments. So he directly takes in the extra argument. So he is a holder of things that could become a localized string. He is not a localized string in and of itself. And more importantly, when somebody goes in to actually get the string, right, via, say, the toString method or the iFormatable interface, right? I love that this is called ignored. You can pass a format provider such as a culture, right, or this guy here, right, to go through and to get the text out in that particular one. Got it. Let's see. Are we now holding on to two references? Are those two references pointing to the same resource? Not quite, because this guy holds on to the key name. So ultimately, he's going to go into the resource manager. I think I understand now. I think I understand. When you call, when something calls, say, toString on it, let's just collapse these guys up, right? He's going to go in, and if you don't specify any culture, he'll just use the current UI culture. Whereas if you use the generated property, you don't have a good way of passing in culture info. So if you want, and that is one really, really unfortunate thing about this generated bit, right? Is if you call this property, it's going to call get string and it's going to pass resource culture. The problem is this is a static property, which inherently means it sucks for testing and it sucks for threading and all of that stuff, right? Statics are a pain in the neck, especially for something that's mutable. Now, probably doesn't mutate that often, and most of the time, if somebody's going to use it in app startup or whatever, they set their culture and away you go. But here, you can actually pass it in, and it'll let you override that, which is really convenient, and it'll be able to pull it back out. I like this. I like this. Okay, but what that means, though, is I'm changing this now because I don't want magic strings. Because I can now do, because I'm going to just take advantage of the fact that I know, where is it? I know that the resx generator generates up, let's do this, generates properties using the property name as the key. So if it's going to use the property name as the key, that means I can name of on it and I don't have to worry about it. I think that's what's intended. And that makes a lot of sense. So now that we just changed the return type, I'm sure something's broken. Yeah, I think that's the brilliance behind it, and that is what I was missing. So, there's a lot of stuff here. Let's go and find it. Okay. So what do we got going on here? So this is add a validator. Validator. This guy is looking to take in, I don't remember what this delegate looks like. So he takes in, boy, I wonder. So I kind of want to. Oh man, I get okay. If we're gonna go big, we go big, right? Okay, let's. While we're having fun breaking APIs, like this is the yeah, go big or go home. Exactly. Uh, this is one of those points where. Man, I kind of want to do. What if you're already home? Hey, Metal Slug. Yeah, that's unfortunate for me because I am already home. Where do we go now? That is exactly correct. Okay. So here's my thought. I'm kind of wondering. So the way this works. Yeah. See, here's the problem. Just Twitch. Um, if I could guarantee that everybody was on Net 5 and C#9, this gets to be really easy because we have covariant return types. Huzzah. Um, but we don't have that. Wait, Robert, you've been watching this whole time and just now hit the subscribe button? I love it. So this validate symbol is basically all around the idea of if you want to go through and validate that, say something exists, right? So it's Amazon Prime. It's free. Ah, that's the magic. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. When you're building up these command line syntaxes, I need to come up with a better name for it. So, for example, I'll just show how it works, right? So, say you were writing a CLI where you were doing a move command where it was, move to, right? And you want this command to take in an argument, and you want the argument that the user passes on the command line to only be a directory info. And you want to ensure that they only give you something that actually exists, right? Obviously, file IO, timing stuff, totally a problem. But yeah, so this is the beauty of it because now when you set up your command line syntax, you just do this and you're done. The problem is now when the user, say, gives you a directory that doesn't exist, we have to display a message to them, and this is where the problem comes. So I'm wondering, and that's what the validator is. It's validating that this thing meets some arbitrary criteria. In this case, a directory exists call. Sure. And thank you, Robert. I appreciate the compliment. So, but I'm wondering, and this would break everything. Do I A, convert from the localized string here, or B, propagate the localized string up and make this a really massive PR? Because if I go through and change this add validator, and I change the return type of this guy from string to localized string, hove, we are going to get propagate up. Yeah, that's the problem. Is that's what I'm thinking needs to happen. This feels like one of those changes where you push it and you go, I want feedback before you spend a whole bunch of time. Speaking of asking for feedback, maybe I'll just ask. Conveniently, I've got one of the developers from the project sitting on my chat. So we just ask. Yeah, I do think that it might be the right thing to do. I'm just, oh, this, oh, oh, yuck, 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 yuck. So here's the other thing we could cheat on, right? So let's just mock this out real quick. If we go down into here, right? And I think this was something that was suggested. I'm trying to remember now. Public static string, or public static, what is it? Implicit operator return string from localizable string. Right, so we can totally do this. Duplicate user defined. Wait, what? There's already an implicit conversion. Oh, hold the phone. Hold the phone. There is a conversion, but it's explicit. Ah, interesting. Implicit new .NET 5 keyword. Actually, no. This has been around, boy, at least C#3, maybe earlier. So it allows you to automatically convert, well, here, just demonstration. So localizable string foo, right? String bar, right? So it lets you be able to do stuff like this. So if I go through and say want to convert, because foo's there, right? I can now do this conversion and, oh, hush. Hush now. Hush now. We're just doing a demonstration. Stop yelling at me. Right? I can do this conversion, and what the compiler will do is it'll look for these operators, these conversion operators, and it'll invoke them if they exist. So there's actually quite a few built-in types that have fancy explicit or implicit operators. So this one is explicit. If we got really crazy, we could do this, and then I don't need to specify string anymore. So there's the difference between explicit and implicit. Explicit basically means I can cast to this thing. Implicit means, just do it. So they are really great and really powerful. However, they are not easy to discover. And so you want to kind of be careful at what point you use them, because there is a discoverability issue. But oftentimes, if you just make things like implicitly convert to the type that people want, they fall into the path of success and don't realize, hang on, wait, what? Usually that's how they come up. So, but this one's explicit, and it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense, because in general, you only want to do implicit if, yeah, explicit is nearly impossible to find as well. You basically find them by looking at the type. That's pretty much, or documentation. Those are the ways they come up. I'm wondering. Hold on. I just closed that, and I do not want to leave that code sitting there. Somebody will probably question me and say, "Dear heavens, what are you doing?" I am wondering, though, if perhaps, so given that, right, this guy here becomes x lambda, right, and we can just do, right, like we can do that and get away with it, right, because isn't this what this guy wants? String, this guy actually goes to string nullable, and I think that's expected, because a validator, you either return a string for an error message, or you return null to indicate success. It's kind of a weirdish API, but it's also an API where you don't have to use it that much. Cast check before we do the cast. That's the beautiful part. We don't have to. Because operators themselves. Oh, interesting. So operators themselves will get invoked because they're static methods. So you don't. So just kind of like extension methods where you don't necessarily need to do like null propagation or whatnot on them. Operators are the same way, but this guy would throw. So that is a well. Okay, so here's the thing though. This should not be null. Oh, suck. I hate this. So because nullable reference types are turned on, it will be a compiler warning for anybody using this. However, this is a library project where somebody without nullable reference types could reference it, which means I have no idea if they're going to do it or not, which means that is what should go there. I wonder how they get away with that, because that seems like that might be an issue in the Roslyn code base too, because people can write analyzers without nullable reference types turned on. I'm trying to think if there's something funky about the explicit operator that I'm missing here. So if localizable string is null, well, we just demoed it a minute ago. You can assign it to null and then invoke the explicit operator. Yeah, I'm thinking the lack of a question mark there is a problem. So but I don't need to necessarily null check here before the cast, because this is nullable one. The good news, Robert, is I don't think we actually need to write tests because I think they're already written. Once I get this thing compiling, we're just going to run them. So this library has, I'll say, a lot of tests. The base library, I think, yeah, the base library, so this number up here for the 2000 is kind of misleading, right? Because I've got 800 times this. Code coverage, I haven't run the numbers, but we can check it. High. I'm going to say greater than 95%, maybe higher. There's a few areas that are hard / impossible to test, that when you get into like, because this thing has abstractions over System.console and whatnot, and System.console is notoriously bad for like timing issues and that kind of thing. And so there's a few areas there that are probably lacking. Not probably. I am very confident are lacking. But but all of this stuff, very high coverage. Okay. Actually, you know what? Well, no, we'll run it first. Let's see if we're in a compiling state, because if we're in a compiling state, we'll just rerun all these guys. No, of course not. Okay, so let's chase these down. I think what we're going to do. Wait, what are you telling me that's an error for? Oh, so there's another one. So I think that I think just doing it here. I think this is what we will do. We will cut it off at the validator, go back to a normal string, and then I will ask in the PR if we should continue to propagate this up, because propagating that up is going to go big, very big. And we might, because that's also going to mean changing out these. I really don't like the cache, just my opinion. So the other thing we could do is we could just call toString on it. It's because the explicit operator is just going to call toString anyway. It's literally the exact same thing. The only thing about that is then I don't have to pass the null for that, but I'm pretty sure if I call toString, it's gonna pass null anyway. So, but I want to see how much is broken. I don't know how much will be broken. Oh, did I leave it? No, I did leave it virtual. The null ref is my concern. Where do you see the null ref at? So in like this cast here, Oh, question mark toString. So you're actually talking down inside of this guy, right? In localizable string. Because if this comes in as null, this guy will null propagate, skip this call, and kick back a null, which is fine because this thing's decorated to return nullable string, so null is a valid response. Same with toString. That's the really sucky part about a lot of toString operators on libraries that aren't decorated yet, is they are. Somebody should not write a toString implementation that returns null, but they totally could. Yeah, so there is that there. That's what I added. That's not in the Roslyn code base. Line 32. Line 32. I assume you mean 35? Oh, you mean on this string here. Yeah. That they do have there. I don't think it's actually possible given their implementation, because this implementation just calls get text, and get text here explicitly checks and blocks and doesn't return a null, because get text is a non-nullable string. So it's a little. I'm still trying to figure out where the issues are, or where to draw the line between what Roslyn needs to do and what we need to do. That I'm not 100% confident on. Okay, I think that cleaned up the errors. Okay, so Test Explorer. Let's just run, rather than running all 2,000. They're fast, but as you can see, some of these run for several seconds, and they all pass. That's cool. So, since you asked, let's analyze code coverage. Because my assumption is good. Now look at that. Didn't I guess 93%? Somebody rewind and tell me. 92.27. So, fairly decent code coverage. I accept that. Yeah, I'm sort of curious now how many of these are, how much I killed this stuff with the new. Yeah, so there's problem one. Right? So I ruined some of the numbers. just going to point out those three right there. Those are not great code coverage numbers. But I'm also now noticing this thing is never hit, which makes me question, can I get rid of it? Let's take it out, because those numbers show that it is not needed. And if it's not needed, let's just get rid of it. And if people want me to put it back in, we can. So this is the implicit operator, create fixed string. Ooh. We might actually, okay, so boom, boom, boom. So we might want that. I think we leave it for now. We probably need some tests around it. Or I go and steal tests from the other one. But I think that at least answers the question. Okay. So, but the important part is this guy actually ran. So let's go through and push this guy. So we're going to start with this. Update to using Roslyn. That guy. Yeah, I think what we do is we do this, we push it, and then we go and leave some comments. Because that is now. Okay, more updates with some additional questions. 1. Where should or how about this? How high up should the be propagated? right now, with the single resource I have done, we are converting to a string in the validation delegate, right? So don't, if you learn from me, Robert, don't learn how I spell, because that's not good. Should the validation delegate be changed to use resource string, or remain as system string? Okay, so that's the first and probably the biggest question, is how big of a mess should this be? Because let's bring this down. Is my copy of correct? The one from the Roslyn lib also includes a bunch of something. Scroll up to the top because I have it here. Includes a bunch of stuff for that I removed. Is do we need that? So there's that. Let's see, how high up should it be propagated? Is it still acceptable to use the validation messages class as the entry point for getting these messages? Should we rename validation messages to something more appropriate? Since okay, so here's a question. So feedback required. What would you expect the name of the class? So not a lot, Robert. But so here's the question. Right now, all of this stuff lives inside this validation messages class, and I am turning off code coverage as soon as I figure out where the heck I put it. Go away. Yeah. What would you expect the name of the class that contains that is the entry point for getting your strings for all of the messages? I don't think so. In general, people outside of the library probably don't need to touch this unless they're trying to either reuse an existing message or they are doing some sort of localization work. But the question is, what should this be called? Because I don't think validation messages is completely correct. There's, I guess most of these ones here, like, is this one used inside a validator? I don't think it is. It's not. So the stuff inside of here is kind of validation messages. They're all error messages. Does this class name make sense? Or maybe to word it a different way. What would you expect the name of a class like that to be called? And I would like to look at real quick, because there was some sort of like fake validation messages, right? So this guy here, boom, boom, boom. So this guy goes through and gives a little demonstration of overriding the stuff, right? How is this actually getting all the way in? Oh, use validation messages. Kind of like that. So that's the question. Does that name make sense? Should we rename validation messages, or does this still seem appropriate? Okay, so I think that probably covers that. Okay. And this thing's going to go and run for a metric eternity. Because, again, so this uses the Microsoft build system that they've put together called Arcade that does a lot, but more importantly, it also it works really, really so it's my understanding, because I don't have great insight into this, is it's complicated, but it does a ton, which is cool. We like cool. Okay, so let's go back. I'm going to leave that guy sitting there for the moment and close you. Close all of you. I got all of this stuff. So let's go back to the milestone. And I was going to see, because I think, so this one I think is going to fall off with our, let's look. So this is in, we could, this is kind of blocked by our work. And maybe what we should do is, let's go back down here. I'm going to change my comment just slightly. Especially considering we'll need to add additional messages for things like help, and then boop, put that there, because I think this one is likely, yeah, so these guys are already marked as related, but I don't think we can realistically work on that. Error message arity is misleading. This might be a fun one. So error message arity is misleading or wrong. All the complex. You fix the quote symbol as well as escaping sequence. It's true if so maybe we take a crack at something like this. This sounds like fun. Let's take a crack at it. Okay, so step one, create branch, fix, and then I usually just put the number in 987. That's an easy one. Doot doot doot. Boom boom boom. And back to here and close all. Okay, so let's start with, I think, a test. So in this particular case, we have an option. The options argument is of type list, in this case int, right? And he's added a bunch of stuff that I don't know if it's required for this. But the key part here is he set up the argument's arity. So argument arity takes in two things. I believe it's min-max, but we will confirm. Argument arity, boom. So minimum number of values, maximum number of values. So yeah, min-max. So effectively, this is saying I have an option. It takes a list of numbers. My list of numbers needs to be exactly 3 numbers. Okay, so I'm cool on that. This gets mapped to a property. Great, fine. I don't know if that makes a difference. Note that I provide a default value. Okay. There are 2 problems. When help is printed, the defaults are not printed out properly. So yeah, so that is a problem. Yeah, it probably shouldn't do straight up toString, because that look ugly. If the wrong number of integers is provided, as arguments by the user, the error message is misleading. Okay, so we can do this. And let's go and find let's go and find an appropriate place for a test. So this is going to be something around arity or similar. Actually, let's just find all references of the arity constructor. That will probably get us here. Can have custom parse delegates. Yeah, type conversion tests. I'm wondering though, given that our expectation is on the message, if we should do something different. Maybe do it in like the parser test, because the parser tests, I believe, have a bunch of ones down here in regards to the message. Yeah, should throw. That's argument exception. Yeah, but for example, this, right? So this is a great example of it runs the parser and then parses on the message. So we might do something like that. Let's do it in here. This is probably a fine location. So we'll go to the bottom. This thing is big because, well, this is kind of a big thing that it does. Public void. Let's see, arguments with of type list show how about with default values show correct error message. Because what was the exact case? Shows the error message when when arity not matched. There. Okay, so if we extra white space, I clean it up. I clean it up because I can. So let's do this. We will paste in that guy, and we'll just start working from this. So the nice part is this thing has right. It's just a straight up parse method. So we can literally do this. So this is an extension method that boils down to doing a parser with some default configuration. So we could go back to the parser directly and do this work, but I think, so if it looks weird that we aren't actually instantiating a parser, just be aware the extension method here is actually doing it under the covers for us. So somebody may squawk and complain and say, move it to a new one, but we're going to do this. So let's start with this. Filter size, 1, 2, 3, right? Boom, boom, boom. And this should be var parse result. I don't like var in this case, but I also don't like typing. So, boom, boom. So let's look at result errors. Let's see. I think the other one's the dot. Where do we put it? Not helpful. Whatever. I think I'm going to move the dot down too. Boom, boom, boom. So if you aren't familiar with this, this is fluent assertions. Used heavily throughout this library. Should be... Hang on. Oh. Okay, so that does that. So let's run the test and confirm that we at least get the success case first. And then we're going to go, we'll blow it up. Okay, so that works. So now if we explicitly violate the arity, so we pass 1 and 2. So the expectation is this test should now fail. So good. That makes me feel much better. Oh, good. We named it with an A. So collection expected to be empty, but requirement is missing for Oh, interesting. Interesting. So this is slightly different than the behavior. So required argument missing. So I wonder if this lines up with something John was working on. What happens if I do this? Because this thing is, because it has a maximum arity of 3, it should only swallow the first 3, and then the remainder should be unrecognized command or argument 4. Yeah, so it swallowed up 1, 2, 3, and then went with an unrecognized command. So this may become a non-issue. I know John was working on some of this stuff that was a little more gnarly, so I'm going to stop immediately and wait for his PR. Because I think this might get resolved by his work that he's working on, because he was specifically looking at some of these parsing issues. So we're going to punt on that. This is a rename, but I don't want to think too hard about it. That could be interesting. So that is worth mentioning. So we'll talk about this guy real quick. So as part of the grammar for this guy, and I'm gonna go and grab the docs page if anybody's interested. Process, syntax, concepts, and parsers. So if we go into this guy, so when I talk about the grammar, like the commands, the options, the arguments, all of that jazz, this page here has all of it. But specifically, what we're looking at on this one is the directives. So this is something that isn't most of the like the commands and options and that kind of thing is fairly standard-ish. It's kind of trying to tread a fine line between what people are used to in like the Linux POSIX world and like also blend in PowerShell-y people and have everyone be happy. Which is a hard line to kind of tread because sometimes those two sides are incompatible. So this library aims to try and make everyone happy, but this concept of a directive doesn't really show up in a lot of places. But the idea here is these are things that are sort of like meta level stuff for your commands. You can actually cheat and leverage these things on so I believe even like the .NET CLI. So if I grab I believe if you do .NET, so for example, new help, right? You get some stuff. But I believe you can do this. Oh, is that there was some magic in here. Because the .NET CLI was initially based on this. But this idea of being able to do directives, and so in this sample, they're using the .NET Interactive tool here. Like something like the parse directive allows you to say, show me how system command line is going to interpret this information on the command line. So it goes, oh, okay, let me show you what my view of the world after parsing it, right? So it does the parsing of it and shows you what that would be without actually doing any invocations. So it's a nice, convenient thing. And there's a bunch of these different directives that exist. But one of them is a debug directive. So if we go and look at that guy, let's go and look. Debug directive. That is not helpful. Find all references. Show me where you exist. Boom, boom, boom. There's this guy. So this guy adds in a little bit of middleware. And so this library has a concept of sort of a pipeline. So you pass in your string args, it gets parsed into a tree, and it walks through some of this various middleware to figure out what to do. Things like maybe help might short circuit it to display, the help output of it or that kind of thing. But one of the middleware things is this debug directive. So it specifically goes hunting for it. And what it'll do is it'll just sit here and spin and wait for you to attach your debugger. So if you've got a tool that's not behaving properly for you inside of Visual Studio for whatever reason, and you just need it to start, but then hold on 1 second so I can get my debugger attached to figure out what's going on, this is what it's used for. The problem being is that this is potentially problematic in a production type situation where the debug directive could theoretically hang you. So there's that. So let's take a look at the discussion here. So this is asking for a few things. So design a little bit. Should it be opt-in rather than the current opt-out? So the reasoning there is right now, this use debug directive is part of the defaults, so it's always being added. But you could go through and do something different. So we could have a default timeout, and I kind of suspect we might do a bit of a combination of all these. Given 2 ways to access the functionality, as well as environment variable needs to be specific to the tool. This is related to, oh, don't care. Let's see. Opt-in approach as well. Should be a safety feature that would enable opt-in variant of the functionality. So I think what we probably want to do, so the environment variable is clearly the favorite here. So a couple things, because what we saw above before is this. Would we want the environment variable to be one globally thing or tied to a specific tool? I feel like I would want this tied to my tool. But that doesn't mean that the environment variable needs to contain like the tool's name in it. It could be something like the way process monitor does it. I'm trying to remember. So like process monitor, there's a menu option that says replace task manager. And so there's a fancy registry key you can set that basically does debugger redirection for a given process. And you just give it the name of the exe. And Explorer, when it sees that registry key set, it goes, oh, let me go and start up that debugger for you. Well, it doesn't actually check to make sure the thing you point it to is in fact a debugger. It just fires up the exe and passes off the thing to it and says, here you go, have fun. Which is great, except for it sucks. And can be used in all sorts of nefarious ways, as you can imagine. Being able to redirect somebody's exe to something else without doing anything other than setting a registry key is quite fun. For example, redirect Chrome to Internet Explorer, or I'm sorry, Edge. Don't do that. That would be mean. But great for your coworkers on April Fool's Day. Hopefully none of them are watching right now. I think what I would say though is if there's an environment variable set. Okay, so let's look at this. So use debug directive. Show me, do we have any direct tests on this? Yeah, not exactly shocking. So it's part of the defaults, and that's pretty much it. And I think a lot of this boils down to this idea of how do you write reasonable tests over this without doing something insane and doing this work. So I think what we need to do here is pull an environment variable. And I'm trying to do, so let's start with this. So we're only going to do this if we're inside of here, right? So environment, get environment variable, right? And we're going to feed it a name. And so the question is, what name do you feed it? And let's just do system command line allow debug. All right. So I think that we do. So string value, right? So I'm wondering if what we do is we check ourselves against this value, right? So perhaps allow this value to be semicolon delimited or something, right? And so if my XC is put in this thing or whatever, right? Then we go through and do it. Let's just imagine we're going to do that. So var because on the process, what do they call it? It's like process process name, right? So how about string process names gets value and split can't spell, right? So and you need to be a character, and then string split option. Oh, come on. Yeah. String split options. Remove empty entries. Okay, so we do this. What are you? Oh, I guess it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So it kind of does. Kind of does. So this is going to be an empty or a nullable array. And so if process names any, right, then we'll actually do this work. So we're gonna make you opt in, and I think we are gonna allow for a timeout. Yeah, I think we probably should allow for a timeout. And then we probably should have if string is null or white space, right? Let's do value. We should, because I'm imagining right here what we should do is we should do some sort of console out, right, to tell them, hey, we're done, right? Like, here's what you need to actually go and enable. And then this, wow, that was very much not what I wanted to do. This guy here, then something like that, something like that. I think it works like that. And so this guy here should be probably should be using a localized message given our previous thing, but we're going to wait on that for a minute. How about debug directive specified, but no processes allowed. Add your process name to the const string environment variable name. All right, we're just gonna do this a little cleaner. It's gonna be ugly, but we can make it less ugly. We can make it less ugly. Environment variable name. What is this doing? Simplify member access. Do we have a using static at the top or something? Is that there before I got here? Or did it just add that? That was there before I got here. Okay. We can do that then. So, and then we are going to do, let's see, environment variable, yada, yada, yada. We probably should do more messages, but general idea, right? So if the debug directive is specified but the environment variable is not, we give them a useful message saying, go set the environment variable. Okay. Come down here, we check. So if there are process names, I think what we do here is or value split. Just do some pattern matching magic here. Is process names length. Is it possible to do a string split and get a length of 0? Trying to think about that now. Is that a possibility? Because what I know for, so I don't know if I need to check it for null. Because I know it's not null or white space from the first condition. If I split on semicolons, my only options are has semicolons, doesn't have semicolons. And in either case, I end up with an array of length greater than 0. So this is kind of a worthless check. This one was being done because it's possible to not, yeah, so this doesn't matter anymore. This is not possible to be reached given the null or white space check. So that goes like that, that goes like that. Everyone's happy. This gets cleaned up. That gets simpler. Okay, so that goes like that. And then, let's see. If process names dot contains process name. Next question, should these be case sensitive or case insensitive? Let's be explicit about what we're going to pick. I think case sensitive makes the most sense. Trying to decide if that's true in all environments. Process names case sensitive. Get process by name case sensitivity. Got it. Okay, so things can differ by case. That's exciting. So the way you do a contains with case sensitivity, let's see, process names dot index of. Right? Why is this squawking at me? Oh, because this is an array. Wait, doesn't array have index of? Am I crazy? Contains this contain. Wait, what? Oh, I guess there's an equality compare here, so that'll work too. I was thinking I must be getting the list index of confused with it because one of these you can specify an overload. Sorry. Let's see. So let's do string comparison. And I think what we just decided is ordinal is the right thing. So if it contains it, then we'll do the stuff, right? Boom. that gets us there. And then else, right, we should do some more thing of something about the let's see, process name, ding. Let's see. Let's see. Process name is not included in the environment variable, and then we'll just tack the value in so people can see what it is we see. Let's see, so this should be renamed debuggable process name. There. That at least gives something useful. And then we move on. There's a bit of a question about should this be an error in any of these cases, or if we should just allow it to keep processing. I don't know. I don't know the expectation. Yeah. Okay, so given that, this guy here builds it up, and away we go. So I'm wondering, can we reasonably write tests over this? I don't know if we can. Like, we could write tests with the environment variable. I'm just worried that multiple things might land. If tests get run in parallel, that could get interesting. Because once again, static coupling is a bad thing when it comes to testing. I think we probably need to clean up the messages a little bit. I'm just trying to see if this all makes sense. And I'm also wondering about an environment variable for a timeout. The other thing we could do is we could allow a timeout to be specified here. Let's see. Time span. Let's see. Debugger attach timeout. Isn't there a something like that, perhaps? Must be a compile time constant. Of course it must be. Of course it must be. So what we're going to do is this. Okay, builder, use debug directive, time span 0. There. I have no idea why my thing has passed. Let's see. And then okay. While debugger attached, and let's see. Date time dot now minus start time is less than static bool is passed. Timeout. I don't like pass. That's a mislead. Is timeout exceeded? Should timeout. That sounds better, right? That gives, we'll put a, because I kind of want to put a name to this meaning. So if debugger attached timeout is time span, so we only time out if we are, let's see, if we are not 0 and datetime.now minus start time is greater than that, and not should timeout, right? We'll add a timeout in there. Because that makes it easier. Okay. Outside of cleaning up these messages, I think this makes sense, and I think this handles everything that we had specified in there, which is great. But no process process names are listed as allowed for debug. Add your process name to the environment variable. And I'm wondering, because again, what's going to happen is this is going to hit. It's going to then jump outside this, fall down, and do await next. And there's a question of, should this continue? Right? Like if you specify the debug directory, but you haven't set this up, what is the expected behavior? Right now, it just writes out a message and moves on. And there's also a reasonable argument to be made that this shouldn't just be going to standard out, and this should be standard error. But if that's the case, should there be an exit code? Right? That, I think in this case, this is almost assuredly an error. And maybe this one should also be an error. Not included in the list of debuggable process names in okay. I'm wondering if this should be changed to be debug system command line debug processes. I think this is another case where I push it and see if there is a way to, if there's feedback. Yeah, this feels like a push it and request feedback. So we are going to discard those. Making the debug directive opt-in. Okay, so there's that. So we're going to push that, and then we're going to go open another PR. Hey, look, the other PR built correctly. So we'll just wait on feedback there, which is great. We'll come over here, compare and pull request. Let's see. Fixes pound 987. Boom. This is not the right branch name. 468 is what we want. So we're just going to rename that little guy. Rename, paste, submit, and push. Let's see. Oh, because I pushed it to the remote. Here, let's just do this. Delete that. Set upstream. Come on, where's the set upstream? 468. Submit. Push that. Okay. Okay, that solves that problem. So come back here, back, refresh GitHub, find the new branch. Thank you. Fixes 468. And I think what we do is one possible solution for addressing the debug directive. Some questions. One, is the environment variable name acceptable? Two, should specifying the currently the messages, if you specify, nope, the debug directive, but have not opted in, the environment variable are written to standard error. Is that correct? Should error conditions like that short circuit or continue calling through the pipeline? If they should short. I cannot spell. Right. What should the exit code be? Let's see. I added an optional timeout. Should with a default of infinite. Should this default be changed? Sure. Let's just check the files real quick and make sure they are as expected. It's a white space change from one of my auto formats, white space change from an auto format, overload that I created that passes in 0 so that everything continues to compile. I know we didn't see any tests, but let's just for my own sanity real quick, let's just rerun these before. Because nothing's more humbling than when you think you haven't broken anything and then you push it to the pipeline and the pipeline whacks you upside the head. So it's okay. So the test pass, that makes me okay. Test pass, that makes me feel better. Okay, so this goes here. I guess one other question. Well, we'll circle back to it. My localization PR kind of has to merge first. So create PR. So we'll get that going. We will get that going. And I think with that, it is 11 o'clock for me, and usually right around my quitting time. So I think I'm going to probably call that good for the night. If anybody else would like to get involved in this project, like we are constantly looking for feedback from people on how it works. It's worth noting the GA Milestone is specific to sort of the core libraries. So that's the System Command Line. I'll call it proper library, but also the tab completion. So that falls into like the command line suggests, because that's one of the other things that it adds is if you build a tool with this, people who enable tab completion, it'll get turned on once for all .NET CLI apps, and then it'll just work. And so you don't have to do anything special in your app to enable that aside from use System Command Line, which is cool. So, and you get tab completion for free. So there is all of that. So if there is anyone who would like to contribute, and it doesn't necessarily have to be directly for this stuff in the milestone. This is the stuff that's high priority at the moment. So if something looks interesting, and there are a lot of things that need discussion, the XML docs are easy. If people want to spend a little time reading through some of the code and documenting what it's doing, there's been a couple people that have been doing that, and it has been absolutely amazing. So if there is something in here that you would like to jump on and take a look at, feel free to do so. There is also a Gitter chat room. I'll drop that in the chat too. So if anybody decides to take something on or has questions, feel free to post in there. And then there should be somebody there. There's quite a lively community of people answering questions, as well as a bunch of the people who've worked on the project. So somebody will have the answer, I assure you. But with that, I think I'm going to sign off. Next week is Christmas Eve, and there is a very real chance that I will be canceling my stream. So just keep that in mind. I think I might be able to do it, but it is a family time for us, so we will see. But there may be a last minute cancellation. So follow my Twitter, and if I cancel, I will always, or at least I'll try to go through it and post a tweet there. So with that, I will say happy coding. Have a good night.